Hi there, it's Alexandra from the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel and blog, and we're talking about garden seating as we welcome friends and family back to our gardens after the winter. I'll put links in the description below to any resources I mention and also list the ideas with timestamps. So if you want to go back and have another look at any of them, just click on the highlighted time next to them and it'll take you straight to that part of the video. If you're new here, the Middlesized Garden uploads weekly with garden tips, ideas and inspiration, and if you'd like to see the videos when you open up YouTube, click the subscribe button. They're absolutely free, and if you'd like YouTube to tell you when a new video is uploaded, then click the notifications bell. The first thing to think about when you're planning your garden seating, of course, is where to put it, and the obvious place, and very often the best place, is directly outside the kitchen door on a terrace. The huge advantage of that, of course, is that you don't have far to take plates and food and drink and anything you need when you're eating with a group of friends. And if you're planning on putting a dining area in another part of your garden, it's really worth thinking about that. However, it's not the only place to put seating. And garden designer Jane Beedle, whose garden is only 52 feet long, said that it's always good to have 2 or more places to sit in the garden. She has a place to perch for coffee with a little cafe table and 2 chairs just outside her kitchen door, and then a main eating area with a big table and sofa seating in the main part of the garden. And she also has gabions, or a retaining wall, which are at the height for people to perch if you had a larger party. We do this in our parterre because the retaining wall up to the upper lawn is just the right height to sit on, and actually we did plan that. And so we put cushions out there when we've got lots of people for a party. One of the great things about having several seating areas in your garden is that you see the garden from a different view, and particularly in summer when flowers are high, that can be really enjoyable. I remember one evening when friends suggested that we place our table higher up on the lawn, really close to the main border, and it was just so lovely to sit surrounded by flowers, very much at the height our heads were. So certainly think about temporarily moving a table or a table and chairs to another part of the garden. But also look at areas that are not perhaps really doing very much at the moment. Some friends of ours had a shady border where nothing much grew and it was under some big trees. And they then decided to put a small octagonal piece of decking with a chair and 4 tables literally in the middle of the border. The colours from the cushions and parasol really light up that particular part of the garden, but the greatest pleasure is that they sit there for breakfast and they can see a completely different view of their garden, and in fact a very good view of their vegetable patch. If you are going to put decking on soil or lawn, it's important to remember that wood will rot very easily. So in this particular case, what they did was create 4 small concrete posts, which they put into the earth, and they were actually at different levels because that particular border is sloping, so it also gives you the chance to make a flat surface. They then added a weed suppressing membrane and put the decking on top of that. 2 other lots of friends of mine were taking down trees, and they've turned those trees into seating. It actually adds to your costs to have trees taken away or chipped very often, and so leaving them in the garden and asking someone with a chainsaw to turn them into seating can actually be a very good option. In this first option, these trees are quite slender, and so they planed one side flat to make a seat side with just using a chainsaw. And then the tree surgeon cut some small sections of tree trunk to use as legs and laid the long section of the tree trunk on top of the legs. And they also used the chainsaw to take a little wedge out of the bottom side of the tree trunk so that the seat bit fits onto the leg bit quite snugly. It's not an absolutely smooth seat, but they take cushions out whenever they've got people coming around, perhaps for a barbecue or to sit around the fire pit. The other tree was a really big, very, very old tree, very difficult to move. And as you can see, they've carved a bench into part of it, and in other areas they've carved off a tabletop level, and also there's another bench level. They're actually halfway through this project, but the idea is to use these huge trunks of very old tree trunk to create some kind of an informal seating area in the garden. And at Doddington Place Gardens in Kent, there was a part of the garden that was just sort of pretty neglected.
Richard and Missy have been thinking a long time what to do with it, and there was a natural slope with the view. There was also a natural pathway that sort of brought you round to this spot, so a bench to sit and just contemplate seemed the ideal thing. We've got a lot of already quite high maintenance areas of the garden, so we wanted something quite naturalistic, where the landscape spoke as much to you as the plants around the bench.
In this area of the garden, we've had a corner which historically hasn't been used as part of the garden as much as others, and over recent years we've been sort of gradually improving it, filling out scrub, and it got to the point where there's such a lovely view across the other direction that having some sort of bench and sitting area, but we had the slope to work with. So I think on an occasion when there was a digger on site, we got them to scrape it a little bit flatter and make this slight curve in the bank for us. And then with a pile of this lovely looking York stone in the old workyard, which we were keen to use, we had the idea of building it into a nice bench to appreciate the view.
If you're going to do something like pile up pavers or bricks to make a seat, once again you've got to think about the foundations that seat is sitting on, because the earth will settle in different kinds of ways with rain and movement.
A lot of the work is unseen underground now. We dug a big trench and filled it with a lot of hardcore and rubble and crunched that all in.
It's a bit like dry stone walling. We found that it was a mix and match. It was quite a therapeutic thing to do, actually, but to find the stones with the width that's the same, as well as to fill the gaps, because if you have too many different levels of width, then it's going to be rocky and move around too much.
And while we're about it, I'd like to put in a vote for curved benches generally. We've got a very standard curved teak bench, and what's really nice about a curved bench is that when two people sit side by side, you're slightly facing each other, so you don't have to crick your neck and turn sideways. When I did my video on 12 garden styles, and I'll put a link to that in the description below, I said that one of the things that was really helpful was to have either a word or feeling or theme that defines your garden when you're buying garden furniture. Because there's so much choice out there, how do you choose? So if, for instance, you've got a very classical or traditional garden, then something like a Lutyens bench, seen here at Bath Priory Hotel, is absolutely perfect. Or perhaps if you've got a slightly wilder garden, just a simple little bench in amongst the trees is all you need. For cottage garden style, of course, you've got mismatched furniture. But if you've got mismatched furniture and you don't particularly want a cottage garden style, then a pot of paint can work absolute wonders. Garden designer Posy Gentles has a lovely planting style. She likes to use soft pinks, deep plums, peach colours, and rather like the colours of sort of old silk in her garden. And so she painted her mismatched vintage garden furniture, this lovely deep plum colour, to reflect the planting around it, and I think that looks very pretty. The other thing that painted garden furniture can do is really add a sort of splash of colour into a darker place. And I love the way that Richard and Jacqui Drew have used blue accessories, blue garden furniture, painted blue plant stands and steps to add colour to their shady north-facing garden. And the video on that is also in the description below. Garden designer Mark Lane advises you to remember that you need lots of seats with different heights in the garden. And if you look around your home, you'll see that actually most of your chairs and sofas and things, there's lots of different heights because people themselves are at different heights. And also, if you're thinking of accessible garden design, Mark says it's important to have seats both with an arm and without an arm in the garden, because some people need the seats on an arm to help themselves in and out of a garden seat, and others actually would find that a seat arm gets in the way. If you have wheelchair users in your garden, then check the height of the table and how a wheelchair will fit under it. Mark says this is a common mistake. And there's more about accessible garden design in my video with Mark Lane in the description below. There are more ideas for inspiring garden seating in another video in the description below, and do check out my garden design playlist at the end of this video for more ideas of how to design your garden. And if you'd like more tips, ideas and inspiration for your garden, then do subscribe to the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.